Welcome. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And been having some technical issues, so I'm on my laptop today. And sorry for the, whatever you want to call this, gothic light. I know Halloween's over, but we do what we can here. And my guest today is Gabrielle Cerubo of the Division of Academic Affairs, Center for Teaching and Learning. And she's going to be talking about being a LaGuardia education major in the program here, then transferring to Queens College, where she has found the strength of the two colleges' articulation agreement to be very beneficial. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Thank you. Gabrielle. Yes. Gabrielle. But pronouncing it Gabrielle is a very common, a lot of people, I've met people from like Italy, let's say, and they pronounce it with like they're singing an aria where they go Gabriella. So it really depends on, who's talking.
Must be nice. Being serenaded.
It is like being serenaded. I had a voice and speech teacher once say that Italians speak as though they are singing an opera, which I always really enjoyed. So that is a good segue into that. Hello, my name is Gabrielle, and I recently graduated from LaGuardia. I graduated back in June. But my path to getting there was kind of a roundabout way. I moved to New York City from a small town in Rockland County about 7-8 years ago now to be an actor. I was studying acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I graduated from there in 2015. And I was trying to do the whole, acting thing. I was auditioning. And I was, in the meantime, I was nannying, I was lifeguarding, I was waiting tables. I was a personal assistant for a wedding planner. That it was a horrible experience. I did a bunch of nonsense jobs to try and support my craft. But the one thing that kind of stuck out as I was continuing to audition, I was booking a lot of things that had to do with educational theater. I was doing where I was choreographing shows, or I was working with kids. I was doing children's theater. I even in 2019, right before I came to LaGuardia, actually, I toured with a children's educational theater company called Stars Within Reach. And I toured with them for 3 months. We did like an East Coast tour where we performed 2 different educational shows for a lot of communities that, for a lot of the kids, it was their first experience with theater. And oddly enough, we actually came to New York, to the city. We performed at LaGuardia, which is kind of like, which was so funny when I was really kind of wrestling with the idea of going back to school. And I was like, LaGuardia had a nice campus, and I don't live that far from there. I lived in Woodside at the time. So I was like, this might be what I should do. So in the spring of 2019, I decided, you know what? Auditioning is making me miserable. I'm not booking the work I want to book. And I really think I was like, I think it's really time to make a change. So I decided to try to apply to Hunter College, but because the acting conservatory I went to wasn't like a regular academic college, I didn't have enough regular academic credits to get into a 4-year college. And I had taken my SATs a long time ago, so it just wasn't like Hunter, said, we're so sorry, but we can't admit you. And I was like, well, I guess, am I supposed to keep acting? I don't know. And then in August, I got an email from LaGuardia saying, we saw that you didn't get into Hunter, but we think that you will do really well if you come here, and we're going to do priority registration. And this was like August, and it was like the semester was starting in like 2 weeks at that point. And I was like, well, I guess I'm doing it. And I ended up, I got all my paperwork in, I applied, and my main thing was the financial aid aspect. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to afford to go to college. And I was extremely fortunate that the way that the FAFSA worked out, I was able to go. And I have to say that coming to LaGuardia was probably the best decision I ever made. And I'm not just saying that because, we're on the radio show or whatever, but but it really was. I met some pretty fantastic, my classmates. We were in person at the time, right before the pandemic hit, and I was really enjoying going to class every day, or pretty much every day, and it gave me a real sense of I was really doing something with my life, and I wasn't miserable all the time, which was pretty fantastic. And I decided to go the route of majoring in education with a concentration in English. Eventually, my goal is to be a high school English teacher, and also a drama teacher, because I do have a degree in acting. So I would love to, be as part of the theater department, and that's, maybe one day get my PhD, but that's kind of a far off thing. But I ended up joining the education department, and I met some pretty fantastic people, specifically Professor Michelle Malone. She was my professor, but also really a mentor during my first year when I was trying to figure out where I was going to go after LaGuardia, because 2 years was flying by. And within the first year seminar, so the first year seminar is I don't know, for those that were perhaps at LaGuardia before or now, but that we have a first year seminar that is discipline specific, that helps students kind of figure out their path at the college. And within my first year seminar for education, Professor Malone really helped, at least I found it extremely helpful to know about, what colleges were going to have the programs I needed, how to transfer to those colleges, who to talk to, and most importantly, the articulation agreements, which I know we'll get to. But to hear that, specifically Queens College, this is in my case, Queens College and LaGuardia have an articulation agreement within the education department that most of my credits, all but 2 of my classes, transferred. So by the time that I started at Queens College in the fall, like now, I'm almost halfway done with my degree. And this time next year, I'll be student teaching. I'm about a year and a half away from achieving this goal I set out, 2 years ago.
Wait a minute. When you say you finished with your degree, are you talking about the 4-year degree, or are you talking about the master's?
Oh, sorry. So I'm only going to be finishing with a 4-year, with a bachelor's next year, but Queens College has an accelerated master's program, which I will be applying for this coming spring. And then, so next year, some of my classes are going to count towards a master's. And I think in New York State, or at least New York City, as long as you can start teaching after you get your bachelor's, as long as you get your master's within 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the route I'll be taking, and I will be continuing my education with Queens College because I have had such a fantastic experience there. So that's kind of, and I have this ridiculous theatrical background, and my life is it's sometimes, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but sometimes I feel like my life is a 5-act drama. Like it just, you know what I mean? Like it just, things feel so dramatic all the time. And like, just, it felt like serendipity to come to LaGuardia after performing there, doing a job that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed acting. I was having the performance aspect of it was, that's what I wanted. But I wasn't, the industry is just so, I don't even, there's a lot of words I could use to describe it, but
right?
oh my God, it was, yeah, it was, and the main, I had a real light bulb moment when I really decided it was time to go back to school. I was working, helping choreograph and work with kids in a local theater, and they were having a cast party after the show ended. And the woman who was hosting the party had like a hired person to like help like clean up and whatever, but she was also kind of mingling with the guests. She was really nice, and I recognized her. I'm like, I know who this is. I just couldn't remember. I knew her face, and then I heard her mention, that she was in Wicked, and I was like, wait a second, and it was, I forget. Oh, for the life of me, I can't remember her name. But it was the lovely, lovely woman who originated the role of Nessa Rose in Wicked. And she also played the mean girl Libby on Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I don't know. For millennials that watched Sabrina the Teenage Witch in the 90s, I loved that show. But I had this moment of this woman who is very talented, originated a role on Broadway and is taking catering gigs still, even like almost 15 years later. I was like, oh my God, I think I need to go back to school. I can't keep doing this, you know? And, you know, along the way, I met, I still have, I have lifelong friends that I met in acting school, and I don't regret a single second of it. I think if I hadn't, of course, the lovely music of New York City, if I hadn't gone to acting school, I wouldn't have ended up doing shows at a small theater on the Lower East Side, where I met my partner of almost 4 years. So it's kind of a, you know, life happens the way it happens. And I think it's important to be thankful for the things that the journey that you're on, because it'll lead you to some pretty insane places.
Well, I was going to say, you're in a 5-act play, then you're only in the second act, believe it or not.
Yeah, and for I feel like for a lot of folks my age, it can be really hard to think that way, because I operate at maximum capacity at all times. So I am the pistons are firing. I am constantly going. My last semester at LaGuardia, I was nannying for 2 different families. I was working as a student success mentor. I was bartending, and I was taking 4 classes. So I'm not doing that this semester. I am still working as a student success mentor, which I have enjoyed immensely. That has been a real joy to help students within LaGuardia. And I can circle back to that. I'm also working as a.
We could talk about that right now if you'd like.
Sure.
Because you usually talk about people coming to LaGuardia. How did you, you know, I mean, I guess you took the first year seminar, but how did you find yourself as an SSM?
So I did my first year seminar in the mini semester of the winter of 2019, right before everything shut down. And then in the spring of 2020, the pandemic hit after, 2 weeks in, and I was stuck at home. I wasn't able to do my regular nannying jobs, but I was extremely fortunate that I was able to receive the pandemic unemployment assistance. But I felt like I needed something, not more, but I wanted to be more involved at the college. That was because I had wanted to join clubs. I had wanted to do all this stuff, but with the pandemic, I wasn't able to do that. And then I forget who it was. Oh, it was Luis within the transfer services department. I was. Oh
no,
gosh,
Restrepo. No, Jose Placencia is who I'm thinking of. Luis. Okay.
Okay. Very wonderful person. Because from the spring of 2020, I had been in talks with the transferring services and my advisor and Michelle Malone about transferring to Queens College. I had already started my process in the early spring of 2020. With all the uncertainty, I was like, I have to have something like concrete to hold on to. But Luis Restrepo actually mentioned when I was chatting with him about transferring and the college, and he goes, well, the SSM department is hiring. You should apply. I think you're a great candidate for this. And he mentioned that it'll look really, really good on my resume, when I, after I have my degree and I'm looking to work at a school, it'll look really good on my resume that I've already had experience working with students. So I applied, and David and Stephanie, we did the interview over Zoom, of course. And by the winter, I had the job, or it was like that next semester. And in the winter, we started the training, and then in that first, like my final semester, spring of 21, I was an SSM, and I have had such a great time working with David and Stephanie and my other SSM colleagues. Working with people who are students but feel like they can help mentor other students is because you really feel like you're giving back. and you're helping. And it really warms my heart when I hear the students tell me, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You really helped me. We did." Because it's hard with the students at LaGuardia. A lot of them are adults coming back to school, and a lot of them, perhaps, English is not their first language. They are, rusty after however long of not being in school. And I think there's a huge achievement gap in like New York City schools to begin with. So a lot of adults now don't really know how to be good students. And coming back to college can be a real rude awakening for a lot of them. And to be there to kind of help them on that journey and give them the nudge that they need. Because at least this is I firmly believe that if you push somebody just a tiny bit, just a little bit, they will see like what they're capable of. But you have to do it in a way that's going to make sense for them. Everybody learns differently. And that's something that especially with like, let's say my bilingual students, it's so important. Oops, sorry. So important for me to make sure that they know what's going on, because even as a native English speaker, learn to do like e-portfolio stuff online it can go right over your head so quickly. And I can't imagine doing school in a language that I didn't grow up speaking and still doing the assignments completely. Like that's amazing. So like shout out to all the bilingual students at LaGuardia, because I think you're all amazing. And I've worked with a lot of you, and it's been a real pleasure. So to watch other students succeed with my help, it's rewarding in a way that I don't really know how to describe. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I've really enjoyed working as an SSM. I'm currently an SSM. I'm working with health science students and education capstone students, which has been a real ride, because working with students that were in my position is a whole new level of, oh my God, I know exactly where you're at. Like I try to reassure them every single class that I know what you're going through. This is tough. Like the education capstone courses are not easy, but having really great professors and having mentors that know what's happening, I think really helps them to to quell that anxiety. And the articulation agreements are something that I have been telling my students about, that, especially the education students, I tell them, if you're in secondary education, so secondary means like 7th to 12th grade, not to be confused with bilingual education, which is like teaching English as a second language. Secondary and bilingual education are two different things. But it's because I've had people ask me, when I say secondary education, they go, "Oh, so you're teaching, bilingual students?" I'm like, no, because that is, as much as I would love to, I can't, because I don't speak any other language besides English, unfortunately. So I want to make sure that I'm giving my students the support that they need. And I actually had a student tell me, "Yeah, I was accepted to all 3 colleges that I applied to. I just don't know which one." And I was like, "Well, that is an excellent problem to have." And I told her that I told her about my experience at Queens College, and I asked her, I think at that point, it's really like, what's the easiest commute you're going to have, and what has the best program of what you want to do. And I'm in the, because I plan on teaching older students, my department is a little different than the department she would be going into, because the capstone students I'm working with are in childhood ed, which is kindergarten through 6, I think, because early is preschool, and then childhood, I believe, is kindergarten through 6. So, but I know that Queens has, all the different departments of education. And so far, I've had such a great experience. So I can't recommend it enough. If you plan on going into education, Queens College is definitely a good place to go. But for adults that need a fresh start, as an adult that needed a fresh start, LaGuardia was really kind of it was exactly what I needed to do. And that's kind of really where I'm at as far as I sometimes I take a step back in my life and I really think, oh wow, like it's the way things just happen to fall into place. Um, it can feel really affirming when I'm helping students or I'm, when they tell me, oh wow, I hadn't thought about that. Thank you for your input or thank you for your advice. That really helped me. It's it and maybe it's because of the pandemic. I want to give back as much as possible, because I'm in a position to really give back as far as my job. Um, so that's really where I'm at with that, and I've had a really amazing experience here at LaGuardia. I have
Yeah,
to
I
say.
mean, what I was going to say, having taught a first year seminar, is that, or just in general, I think that students are really learn a lot from other students. And so this idea that the success mentors are there for them and can give them some feedback if they're prepared to listen. Because in the beginning, when they show up and they see the faculty member and then they see the SSM, I don't think they even realize that the SSM could be currently a student or is a former student that's now moved on to the next level. But when they finally figure out, oh, this person's been through this and can, tell me what's what, I think that's really, because for us, faculty, we want to help, and sometimes, a lot of times we think we know what's best, but a lot of times our information, I went to college. This year actually celebrates the 30th anniversary of my starting graduate school, if you can imagine. And I've been teaching at LaGuardia for over 25 years. So, but I always say some of the same things that you have said, which is, well, why don't you go to the school and see if you can see yourself there? Why don't you, even if it means going up to Buffalo, wherever it is, because you're going to have to be there for whatever number of years, 2 years, 6 years, whatever it is, before that, whether they're at LaGuardia or not. Whenever I'm talking to anybody about their ideas about school, my daughter, I drove around to different places when she was trying to figure out where she was going to go. So, but again, as far as what it's like to go through the LaGuardia experience, I have the insight from as a, the teacher, right, the practitioner, but students know a lot more about what it's like to be, so people know, we're meeting through this program with Conexiones, right, this grant where, one of the things we're trying to do is find students who are transferring or have transferred to the four-year colleges in specific programs. And in my case, it's with the language arts folks, with the, it's education and language acquisition, but so whether it's Latin American studies students or whether it is translation students, but also other students within the ELA programs, and which we're just starting. And then the notion would be, rather than making them SSMs, turning them into podcasters, so that it's good to listen to those
Yeah.
stories about what it's like. And to go back, just to mention, we're going to take a station break in a few minutes, but you had mentioned when you transferred, 2 classes did not transfer. What were those 2 classes? What were the 2 classes that didn't transfer?
The 2 classes that did not transfer were my English 101 and my American Sign Language 101. So the way and that was a Queens College issue. So I spoke with advisors at Queens College, and I explained, I was like, I don't understand how this didn't transfer. Unfortunately, which I think they really should change this up, but Queens College does not have an extensive American Sign Language program. Not like the one LaGuardia does. LaGuardia has an amazing program. Shout out to Professor Jennifer Ward. I had her for both the sections I took, and it was such an amazing experience. I can kind of hold a conversation in American Sign Language now, but I am by no means fluent. But I found I had a real passion for it. So I was very upset when I found that Queens didn't have an American Sign Language program. But the only reason that my English 101 didn't transfer is because the equivalent of the 101 at Queens College is its own is its own requirement. So it's similar to the required core classes here at LaGuardia. So like the ones needed to graduate. That's at Queens College. I wouldn't have been able to substitute my English 101 for that. So like I have to take their equivalent to the English 101. It is a bit different. It's literary criticism. So that's like, I think it's English 170 at Queens, and that's what I'm currently taking. And it is very different than my 101 at LaGuardia. So it made like once I found out that it's just because it's English 170 was a requirement for Queens College, that's the only reason my 101 did not transfer. But most of the time, credits like that will transfer.
Yeah, I'm always interested in this because I hear this from transfer students. We had a transfer student in fine arts who did not go in as a junior, and I think that's really what it's about, right? You want to go into the 4-year as a junior rather than sophomore still. And I think there at Hunter they have like a foreign language requirement, so that was the one thing that she had to take to complete the pathways package. By the way, when you say they didn't accept them, does that mean does that go towards your degree as an elective?
I'm thinking back to my, like, what it said on my degree works. I think that the classes, they still went in as far as my
Right.
GPA goes. But I don't think at Queens College, I don't want to give anybody false information here. But I don't think it was going to count towards my 4-year degree because I had to take the equivalent, a language equivalent and an English equivalent at Queens College, because there were certain classes that had to be taken at Queens College. But aside, all but 2 of the classes that I took at LaGuardia, as far as in my field, so like my capstone courses and all that, those all transferred. So those, now I only have to take at Queens, I have a couple of foundations of education courses to take, and like how to teach writing, how to teach English. I have those courses, but those have to be taken as a senior, so I don't have to worry about those just yet.
It's 12:30, so I want to do a quick break.
Sure.
The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And my guest today is Gabrielle Cerubo, who is with the Center for Teaching and Learning in Academic Affairs. And she is a graduate of the LaGuardia Education Program, and she is now a student at Queens College in their education program. We're talking about the strength of the articulation agreement in the education program with Queens College that facilitated her transferring seamlessly, almost seamlessly, it sounds. And so here's a question. When you transferred, right, talk about that process. Talk about the process, from, the day you decided, okay, I'm getting the 2-year degree. I want to go to the 4-year degree. What was that like? Talk about that.
So the decision came actually during my first-year seminar with Professor Michelle Malone. She did a whole class on transferring, and which was so helpful because I remember the light bulb going off, literally sitting in class, realizing I have a direct path. Oh my gosh. Like, it was because I had been so used to things not working out with, trying to build a career in acting. I'd been so used to like rejection and roadblocks and all that, but I could see it happening immediately. And I'm kind of a special case where I kind of had my path like direct. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Not all students have that right when they come to LaGuardia, and that's fine. You're there to figure out what you want to do. So within the first-year seminar course, Michelle gave us all of the information of what colleges have the programs we needed, what the transferring process would be like. And she, told us you have to make sure you go through the transfer services and speak to them, double check that you have all of the specific classes on your roster that you're going to need, things like that. And the transfer services, you don't have to really talk to them until I'd say the beginning of your second year at LaGuardia. So I, like, in the winter of 2019 into the spring of 2020, that was when I made the decision that Queens College was going to be where I was going to go. And that was when I found out that there was an articulation agreement, and Michelle went through the whole thing with us. She showed us the list of classes that transfer, what their equivalents were. And she didn't discourage us from not going to schools that don't have articulation agreements, because of course a bunch of people had questions about that. And she said, you can, but you might have to take classes over again. And as for adults coming back to school, I needed this degree yesterday. So to think about that, I wouldn't have to retake anything when I get to my 4-year I was like, it's kind of a no-brainer. And to see that, and she went through the whole thing with us. So if you're a prospective education student, make sure you take that EDF, that first year seminar, because that was what really set me on this path of getting to this point in my student career.
So you're communicating with transfer services in your second year.
Yep.
And what are they doing? They're making you fill something out, or they're just making sure you're doing everything correctly. I mean, what point do you start the process of connecting with Queens College?
I connected with Queens College. I'm an overachiever, if you haven't already guessed. So I had applied by like the winter of 2020, like into spring of 2021. The applications weren't due until like March. And I had everything in by like December. I was like, let's get this going. So I was communicating with the transfer office, and I met, I think, twice with Luis Restrepo, and he was so helpful with everything I needed. And he was constantly booked, like his appointments, like everyone wanted to meet with him because he was. So if you're trying to get an appointment with him and you can't, that's probably why he's really good at what he does. And it was very helpful for him to be there to tell me, this is what you'll do. Here's the application. Here's the, this is the list of classes that you need to make sure you have, which it looks like you do. Everything looks great. And it was really, I just needed that confirmation that everything was in place. Because I had a feeling it was, but I just needed that extra, don't worry, you got this. Go ahead, fill out the application. And the transfer services, the office is there to help you with that. They're there to help you with the application and also filling out applications for scholarships as well. Queens College has a transfer honors program and it's for different disciplines. So I was fortunate enough to get into the transfer honors program at Queens College, where you get a scholarship for the full tuition and you get placed in honors level courses. So you do have to maintain a pretty high GPA. It's a bit demanding, but the rewards are, I think, very worth it. And, I talked over with Luis Restrepo about that, and he said, I think this will be great for you. You definitely should do it. And so I applied for that in December, but the application wasn't due until like February. So I actually had to fill out the application again because I did it a little too early. Sometimes it's not always a good idea to jump the gun. So sometimes you do have to wait for certain things, but I'm not a very patient person. So it was definitely a test, a lesson in patience for me. But yeah, so that was by the winter. I would say by like the winter of your final fall semester at LaGuardia, that is the time for you to make sure that your applications are in, that your spring schedule is made. Because once your spring schedule is made and the 4-year college sees what classes you'll have, that's like you're all set. Fill out that application. Do it. Like and make sure so in your first, at least for the education department, your first year seminar is going to have all of the information about transferring already. But I was actually speaking with, as part of the grant, the Project Conexion grant meeting, I was speaking with Professor Michelle Malone, Professor Catalina, I don't want to mispronounce her last name, Almendra, Monica Eckart. We all discussed creating a workshop for not only an add-on kind of to your first year seminar, and as well a workshop for the foundations students. So your foundations class is, in my case, it was ELN 122 with, I had Professor Giovanni Ildefonso Sanchez, and shout out to her because that was such a wonderful class. I really enjoyed everything about that foundations course. But we were discussing having, and Giovanni was part of this conversation as well. She was there. We talked about having a workshop for foundation students that might have switched their majors a little later in their LaGuardia career and might have not taken their education seminar. So we want to have that transfer and articulation agreement workshop within the foundations course. So we're actually working that out right now. We're going to actually be hopefully kind of piloting that to faculty. I think this winter. I think that's the goal, is to have this workshop up and ready by the spring for both first year seminar and foundation students. Because once you're in your foundations, you're laying the groundwork for your capstone class, and at that point, you're almost on your way out of the college. So it's very important that you have that knowledge, and also knowing that the information is there for you. That's also I think a big thing for, especially now with hybrid online school. It's very easy for that kind of information to fall through the cracks. And it's very easy to miss things. Like if you don't have your student email set up, if you're having a problem with it, if you don't know what's going on within any of that, it can be really tough. But it's important to know that speak with your professor, like your education professor. I promise they're there to help you. That was something that I wasn't afraid to do, was really communicating with my professors was a big one.
Yeah, I always joke that probably the most underutilized time at the college is the office hours that we're mandated to set aside to meet with students, because actually some people are really good at getting students to, like Ed Vian, or I hear he has crowds in his office and folks like that. But many a time now mine are on Zoom, of course, because I'm on an online course, and they don't. And then of course, the minute you show up in class, they're asking you questions right out of the gate.
Yep.
So I was there for an hour. Where were you?
Exactly.
I was going to ask though. The last piece I want to know is, so you get into Queens College, you feel all that stuff, and what happened when you got there? Besides joining the honors program, what was that experience transitioning from you're going to LaGuardia every day, and I guess now you're an SSM, you never, in some ways you didn't leave, but you're in Queens College in a sense. So what was that like? Did they make that process easy, or what was that like?
Yeah, so I will say that Queens College was very responsive. Once I got the acceptance email, they sent me all of the proper paperwork. They sent me everything that I needed. They gave me the link to set up my Queens College email, which was a bit of a saga, just because I was a new student. It might take, with technology, it sometimes takes a little bit for you to be in the system. So that was a little frustrating, but it's that I have been hearing, at least with my first year students in my health science classes that I'm an SSM for, a lot of them were having issues accessing their student emails at first. It can be tough when they're brand new and they're still being processed in the system. It's very annoying, but it was really just technology issues that sometimes was the issue. But as far as getting responses I needed, getting the paperwork I needed, and getting the information I needed, Queens College made all that very easy. It was right, not only on the website, but I'm again, overachiever. I was reaching out to professors to get, information about my schedule, what the demands of the class would be, stuff like that. And so far I have had such a wonderful experience and especially within the English department and the education department. They are two separate entities within Queens College. And I was, discussing like even getting my spring schedule set up. I was in communication with both the English department and the education department, and they were, thankfully, because so many students do discipline specific education major, they're like the English department it's one of the biggest within Queens College. It's one of the most popular majors. So the education and the English department talk all the time, and they have classes that are specifically designed to account for like, let's say, a senior student who is student teaching. I have a class where it's like teaching writing that I have to take. That's set intentionally for the evenings, so that gives me time. If I have to student teach, it gives me time to balance that. So far my experience at Queens College has been great. But I think the big takeaway for me is that don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid. It's when it comes to, but I don't want to ask this question because it might seem stupid. I promise you, it's probably not a stupid question. Like it's a question that the professors and the advisors are all there to answer. Like that's the reason they're there. They're not there to make your life harder.
Don't ask,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So, which is something that I have to communicate to my students all the time, because what'll happen classically is I'll say, any questions? No. Okay. See you next time. And then a kid hangs out and asks me the question. I said, if you had asked that, I'm guessing money, like half the class needed that answer.
Yeah.
So why did you wait? But,
I mean, and it's the online forum, I also think can make students even more shy. Especially like if you're at home, it's very easy to get distracted or lose your motivation, or just sit there and stew in your own, like, oh my God, what is happening? Like it makes you, I feel like it can make it so easy for things to get all jumbled. And that's, I mean, I kind of flourished with online school. I was able, because I can motivate myself relatively easily, but that's not, I'm a different kind of student than a bunch of others. So it's not to say that you do have to take personal responsibility for asking these questions and getting the information that you need. Unfortunately, this isn't an elementary or a high school. Your hand doesn't get held. But I will say that the information is there for you. You just need to ask. But the caveat to that is you need to know where to ask and who. And that can be tough because there's so many departments and there's so many people to talk to. So a good person to ask would be, your first year seminar, or even your English professor, or your, a professor that, just one of your professors in general. They might be able to point you in the right direction.
We're moving into the last quarter hour, and so this is the time for if some folks from the audience wanted to ask any questions. I think you have to become a member of Twitch in order to type them in for me. I was going to say that, one of the things I like as a faculty member, when somebody asks a question and I don't have the answer, I start asking that question.
Yeah.
Finally get it, which is not, it can be a little annoying to other people, but, it's the student wants the answer, let's get it. So if there are going to be no questions from the audience, I usually also use this time for people to talk about the future. And I don't know if you wanted to talk a little about that. So you're getting the 4-year degree at Queens College. You may get your master's there as well. And then I guess you're going to be in secondary ed. What particular grade do you see yourself teaching?
I would love to teach juniors and seniors in high school, so kids who are past that nightmare age. I mean, I feel like teenagers, they're all kind of in the nightmare age, and I've been there. It sucks. Being a teenager sucks. I want to be a part of that journey where they're kind of trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, and also see that there's a lot of BS that gets thrown at juniors and seniors that are in high school. I think they get fed, and I got fed this myth that you had to go to a 4-year college immediately and you had to take out all these student loans and all that. And you don't have to do that. You can take a gap year, work a lot, save money, and then apply for financial aid on your own. If you apply for financial aid on your own as like not a dependent on your parents, you're going to get way more money than if you apply with your like showing that you're dependent on your parents. That's like a sidebar of like how to work the system, because that's what I did. I applied like on my own and it worked out really well for me. So knowing.
But when you say things like that, it doesn't make you popular in meetings among administrators.
I'm sure it doesn't.
A lot of them will say, "Oh, well, the data shows if the chances are better of a student going to college if they go straight from high school, blah blah blah." And but I personally agree with you, and I agree with you because of my own experience in life. And I took many gap years.
Yeah, and that's fine. And some people do amazing when they go straight from high school to college. That's wonderful. Like but every student is different, and I think that that's something that the world of education is, I think, really kind of starting to wake up to, is that education cannot be a one size fits all, no matter the grade, whether it's the littles in the preschool or it's a 30-year-old person who woke up one day and goes, what am I doing with my life? And decides to go back to school. But everyone is so different. And I think that there's a lot that is changing within the world of education, and it's really exciting to see. And I think that at least with the experience that I'm having at Queens College, learning about, I'm right now in a Foundations of Special Education course, and I'm learning about how to interact properly with students with disabilities, how to differentiate instruction, and how to really think about keeping my lessons inclusive, and this will be beneficial for even my students that don't have disabilities. They're all going to have different ways of learning something. And that goes for students of all ages. But to answer your original question, I want to teach older students. But, if I have to teach the freshmen, I'll teach the freshmen. Like, it's not it'll be, as long as I'm in a school teaching what I want to teach, that's really, really it for me.
So here's a question for you. Let's say you end up teaching the theater class as an English teacher teaching theater. And a student tells you, I want to be an actor. What are you going to say?
I'll tell them it's definitely not a business for not only not the faint of heart, but just knowing and understanding of what that's going to mean for you, as far as knowing that you're going to have a survival job, knowing what the expectations of the industry are. And I'll be real with them that, like, I tried to do it, and I did do it for a little bit. Some of it was really, really amazing. And I met some of the best people in my life. I met the love of my life. I met my very best friend who I gave a speech at her wedding a couple weeks ago. Like, it can be a fantastic way to meet people and really enrich your life. But there's also a flip side that not a lot of people talk about, that you will have to work 2 or 3 jobs to sustain this lifestyle. And you will kind of hate yourself for a little bit of it. But it depends on if it's also right place, right time, knowing people. That's another big thing that they don't tell you, is that if your sister's friend's uncle's niece is like what was in a Broadway show once, maybe you can pick somebody's brain as far as like, well, how did you do it? And it's usually like, well, I was in the right place, right time. And that I was tired of waiting to be in the right place at the right time. But if I have a student that is ready to put themselves through that, then I will, to the best of my ability, help them do that. But also show them that it is possible to do theater in other capacities. Like, I plan on teaching theater, because I think it's a great way to help students express themselves. And that it can be so much more about, alas, poor Yorick. Like, it's not just Shakespeare and like highfalutin theater nonsense. It can be really fun and students can learn a lot about themselves within the world of theater. But that's a whole other talk for a different time.
Yeah, I recently, in fact, last week I observed, did a pure observation of a theater class, and there, because I'm one of, whatever, I don't know what you call those people that, would have liked to have been an actor or whatever, would have liked to take theater classes, right? If I'd had whatever it was, the guts. And, I made that decision very early for a lot of different reasons. But, I was sitting there and just watching this faculty member working with them. And, I basically blocked out a couple of scenes that they had written themselves because, devised theater is very big here at LaGuardia. Stephanie Sertich champions that. And it was kind of amazing what he could do with them in that little bit of time. They produced this marvelous presentation. And there's something about being in a theater. I was explaining to my wife, it's like, I feel like it feels more like church than church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I once had the same voice and speech teacher that actually said that the way that Italians speak is like they're singing. The same voice and this is from my days at my acting conservatory. This voice and speech teacher also told us that the most magical time is that moment when you're sitting in a theater and the lights go down right before the orchestra starts, when the lights go down and the play is about to begin, if it's not a musical. Literally anything is possible in those moments where the lights have gone out. And that's 7-8 years ago. I still think about that all the time because I look for those moments in my life, not just sitting in a theater waiting for the orchestra to begin, but thinking about those moments of, I could make a decision here. Anything is possible. I just have to make a decision. And that's what really acting is making decisions and reacting. And then, listening is a big one. That's something that I learned actually in acting school is about listening. It's actually a lot harder than you think.
Yes, my wife tells me that I need to get By the way, I feel that way a lot of times just before class starts.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. Anybody who's ever observed me knows that is the case. We're pretty much out of time, so I just wanted to give you, a little time to just say anybody else you want to thank, or any last thing you'd like to say before we're done.
Yeah, well, I would like to, again, say a very, very special thank you to the Education and Language Acquisition Department, Michelle Malone, Monica Eckert, I hope I'm saying your last name correctly, Katerina Alemdra, Giovanni Ildefonso Sanchez. And then I would also like to thank Rebecca Johnson, Lisa Silverman, Jennifer Ward, Rachel Bossio. Those are just some of the most amazing professors that I've had at my time here at LaGuardia. And you have all really helped me achieve more than I ever thought was possible in my own life. So that's a big, big shout out to those professors, and they're all there to help you. And to those students that are watching or will watch this, they are there to help you, and they're there to point you in the right direction. So that's a big thank you to all of those folks.
Yeah, and I want to thank you. Like what just happened today on the show, I'd like to show this to the Conexión folks and tell them, like, this is what I want to do with all the other students. So,
yeah, I'll be happy, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, to chat to any students that need the support. Like I'm part of the Student Success Mentor team, so I'm there to support you as well. So I'm here, and your professors are there, and that's really, I think that's all I've got at the moment.
And well, timely, because the show is over. So for the folks watching and listening, the show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And my guest today has been Gabrielle Cerubo of the Division of Academic Affairs Center for Teaching and Learning. She is a student success mentor, but she is also a graduate of LaGuardia's education program and transferred to Queens College, where she found the strength of our articulation agreement with them to be very beneficial. I wish you a lot of luck. I hope to. I know you want to go to work in the high schools, but if you decide to stay at LaGuardia, I'll be excited to work with you in the future for whatever time I've got left. And we will end the show with we started the show with Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon, alumni, Queens College. I think he was a theater major, and we will end the show with them as well. So take us out, Mr. Pope. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.